10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 89. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 89 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. If you are new to the show, my name is Nick Manella and I am the host, and I'll be guiding you through about the next 10 minutes of jazz instruction. Just a reminder, if you'd like the PDF for this episode, you can go to our Patreon website, patreon.com/10minutejazzlesson, or you can hit up our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com. That's the number 10minutejazzlesson.com, and follow one of the links over to the Patreon site. Thank you so much to the over 50 people who have signed up to be patrons. We really couldn't do this without you, and we hope you're getting all your PDFs and everything that you hoped out of your membership. All right, so today is going to be part 2 of major modes, and what we're going to do today is we're going to jump into something that's much more difficult than what we did last week. So a quick little recap of what we did last week. We used our matrix of different modes of the major scale, complete with all of the chord symbols, which is really going to help you out, because now when you see a chord symbol, you're going to know exactly which mode goes along with it, and hopefully you're also going to have that stuff underneath your fingers. And what we did was we discussed a couple different ways of going through the PDF from last week, a couple different ways of going down the sheet, going across the sheet, going randomly through the sheet, just kind of quizzing yourself to make sure that you know these modes. Now, last week what we did was we basically went through all of the modes that are contained in the same key signature. So, for example, maybe we would start with concert F, and we would play a concert F major scale, then we would play a G Dorian scale, then we would play an A Phrygian scale, and so on and so forth, right through all 7 modes of the major scale. Now, that's a great place to start, and I will, a little word of warning for what I'm going to go over this week. Make sure you have the exercises from last week totally down. Now, that may take you 3-4 months if you're not getting a ton of time to practice or a ton of time to devote to this particular thing. That might take a while. So, put this episode, archive this episode from this week, and make sure that you're not trying to do this stuff before you have the stuff from last week totally 100% down pat. And you'll be on a good path if you do that. All right. But going back to what I was talking about is that basically we're staying in the same key signature. We're just starting that same run of notes from a different root each time. So, playing in concert F, playing in the key signature of 1 flat, but starting it from F, G, A, B flat, C, D, and E, right? So that's challenging, but once you start to do it, it becomes actually pretty easy, because your ears get accustomed to just playing in that one key signature, and your fingers get accustomed to playing in that one key signature. So it's honestly not that difficult, right? Now, this week, we're going to take a major leap into something that is so much more difficult. What we're going to do is we're going to play from a common root. Now, when we start from a common root, the issue is that we're playing in 7 different key signatures for every set of modes that we're going to go through. So the PDF will look a little bit different, right? Instead of saying F major 7, G minor 7, A sus flat 9, B flat major 7 sharp 11, it's going to say this: F major 7, F minor 7, F sus flat 9, F major 7 sharp 11. So what you can see is that we're playing all these different types of F chords, F scales, right? But that is really difficult because the key signature changes every single time. So you figure you're starting in the key of F major, Then when you go on to F minor 7, you're actually playing in the key of E flat major. Then when you're playing F sus flat 9, you are actually playing in the key of, see, I even have to think about it because it's really, really difficult to go through this stuff and put it into the proper key signature, right? So when we're playing F sus flat 9, we're actually playing in the key of D flat major, but we're starting on F, right? But here's the thing about this, is that the goal is not for you to be able to make that mental leap of, okay, when I see F sus flat 9, I have to do the math and realize that that's the third mode of the D flat major scale. You honestly, you don't have time to think about all of that when you're actually improvising. You need to be able to react. Now, this is especially true if you're improvising over a set of chord changes that you've never seen before, which does happen pretty often. Let's say you're at a rehearsal with a brand new band, or let's say that you are sitting in with a big band and you're sight reading the book, and all of a sudden you come upon a solo. And it's a bunch of changes that you've never seen before. So you have to be able to kind of do it on the fly, actually a lot of times in a performance situation. So no time to kind of settle yourself into the changes, practice them a bunch. You know, you are put in a lot of situations being a modern musician where you just have to kind of pull it off on the fly. So back to what I was talking about. Again, I know I keep taking sidetracks, but you'll have to bear with me. So let's say you see F sus flat 9. So instead of making that mental leap where you figure out, okay, I'm actually in the key of D flat major and I'm starting on the third, you have to basically just know what the scale is, the pattern of notes for an F sus flat 9. So think about it this way. If you were to go into each individual interval, and you were starting on this F sus flat 9 and going up through the F Phrygian scale, it would be a half step, a whole step, another whole step, another whole step, a half step, a whole step, and then you would finish with a whole step, right? So it's much better to memorize it that way, maybe as a collection of intervals, or you could think about it this way. If you wanted to think about it in terms of degrees of the scale, so if you're starting on F and you're playing Phrygian, it's going to be 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, 1. Now that is the way that I prefer to think about it. So if you remember that a Phrygian scale is that particular pattern of notes, that 1, flat 2, 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, 1, I find that that makes it a lot easier to actually play this stuff when I encounter it in a set of chord changes, especially when I'm sight reading them. I can quickly go through and do that. Now, here's one other thing that maybe you should do and think about is you want to practice your arpeggios as well as your scales. So when I demonstrate this stuff, I'm going to kind of demonstrate both things for you so that you can hear the differences between them. And also remember, you want to be able to call upon your vertical playing as well as your horizontal playing. So horizontal playing being using mostly scale patterns, and vertical playing being using mostly chordal patterns. That's just kind of shorthand what we call it. So you want to be well versed in both. Now I've gone over a bunch of chordal patterns that relate to last week's exercise, but this week will be a little bit different again because we're starting on that common root, which is a totally different exercise, a totally different way of thinking, and one that's really, really going to make these modes start happening. If you can pull off the exercises from this week at a decent tempo, you are in very, very good shape when it comes to playing major modes. Okay, so let's get into some demonstrations. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start in concert F, and I'm going to play all 7 modes starting from F each time. First time I do it, I'm going to go pretty slow, and then I'm going to go a little bit faster to kind of give you an idea of how I work on these. All right, so this is all 7 modes in the key of concert F, starting from a common root of concert F. So I will tell you that that took me a really, really long time to get together. And you'll notice that I'm not pausing at all in between the modes because at this point, after I've worked on the other sheet for long enough, I really should be able to do this in constant motion. The only time I stopped was to take a breath, and that is just something that woodwind players need to do. So if you need to start by pausing a little bit in between each mode, okay, that's fine. But your goal should be to do this as a perpetual motion exercise because that's how you really know that you have this stuff down. And that you understand the modes well enough to just go through them at a fast tempo without ever stopping. So now what I'm going to do is demonstrate the way that I work on the chord tones as well. Now the interesting thing about this is some of the modes will have the exact same chord tones as each other, right? Like F minor 7 and F minor flat 6 will actually still have the same chord tones as each other if we're playing 1, 3, 5, 7 on everything, which I kind of suggest that you do for now. Also, F major 7 and F major 7 sharp 11 will also have the same chord tones. So some of these will overlap a little bit, but it's just always good to be practicing chord tones as well as scales. Here's what the chord tones sound like from a common root. So you'll notice that there's one particular chord where I am playing 1, 4, 5, 1, 7, and that is the third mode, which is the sus flat 9. By definition, that chord doesn't have a third, even though the scale does. So that's why I'm just making sure that I'm playing the fourth there. Otherwise, other than that, everything else is 1, 3, 5, 7 of some form. Okay, so this is some really difficult stuff. Go and get the other PDF so that you can have the scales written from last week, which is by key signature, and then the one from this week is going to be with a common root through all of the key signatures in every pairing, in every set of those scales. All right, send me any questions. I know this can be confusing. Hopefully I explained it in a way that makes sense to you guys, and just realize that this work may have to come a little bit down the road for you if you're not very experienced with modes yet. Don't let that be a something that dissuades you from practicing this stuff. Just realize it's like everything else in jazz where it takes some time. All right, send me any questions, 10minutejazzlesson@gmail.com. Make sure you go and support us on Patreon, and we'll see you next week with a brand new episode. Have an awesome weekend, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye.